All right. Hey, welcome back to the Go4CEO channel. This is John the Bomb. Building others means business. And hey, I'm super excited because this lady has an infectious laughter and smile. She's, energetic. I just got a chance to meet her, but I read her bio. She's the principal at Solomon Coyle. Shelley brings over 3 decades of experience leading sales teams, managing dealerships, and advising manufacturers. She now coaches leaders to move beyond surface metrics and adopt a more intentional, data-informed approach. Shelley and her team at Solomon Coyle have identified 6 essential metrics that high-performing leaders use to drive growth and profitability. So we'll be speaking upon those metrics, and super excited to have you on, Shelley. Thank you for coming on to the Go4CEO channel. How are you?
You're welcome. Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Well, hey, look, when we start our conversations, it's typically about like, well, okay, Solomon Coyle, that's an interesting name, or how did you think of that? Were you an insider and then became a managing partner? Like, what are some of the stories of how this all started? And take us through that initial journey.
Yeah, thank you. So the founder of the company, David Solomon, founded the company around 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. And it really came out of a need of one of the major manufacturers in the commercial office business needed some help. And so from that engagement with them, the company was formed. And really, Solomon Coyle, so obviously Solomon is David's last name, and Coyle was another person that was very important into the growth of our company, Barry Coyle, who has since passed away. But they really set a foundation for this company. And we're really known as a research and data analytics company, but we also, from that research and data, we also provide consulting, education, we facilitate peer groups for the commercial furniture industry. So it's kind of evolved into and branched out into some other things, but we love it. And, I'm in the process of transitioning to ownership of the business, and it's just been a great ride with David. He's a great partner, and we're just having a lot of fun, trying to scale the business. It's been amazing.
I love this story. I don't have many entrepreneurs on, but I love the entrepreneur story as well. I feel like the Go4CEO community has really evolved in knowing that, hey, you may not even need to own or start a business, but you could be an integral part inside of it and have that thinking like the CEO. And it's so cool that you have a personal working relationship with one of the founders and really seeing now an opportunity to kind of become an equity share partner and all that good stuff. So really neat. So were you recruited to this organization? What were some of the background things that kind of led you to be a part of it? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I was recruited. However, how I met David and Paul Holland at the time, who was another principal with the company, I was a member of their peer groups. When I owned a commercial office furniture dealership, I was a member of one of their peer groups and really valued all the information that came from Solomon Coyle. And somehow we just hit it off. And, that's probably 15 years ago that I met them. And, I was still on my journey with the dealership, and I left to go work for a major manufacturer. And that whole time we just stayed in touch, and David kind of reached out and said, "Hey, I'm looking to start to transition my business, and I think you'd be perfect for it. Would you be willing to come on board?" And it took me a while because having ownership in a company, I had already done it once, and I wasn't sure that I was up for it again, but really, it's hard to say no to this company. It does amazing work. And, through the journey with David and Paul Holland, who was a great inspiration and a mentor to me as well, we have just really made huge progress. And I'm just very excited. I'm very excited that, they chose me to be the person to hand over the baton to. And it's been really wonderful.
Well, that's an interesting scenario, right? You find ways that when you go into marketplaces, if you really believe in something, it's super easy, or it's a lot easier, right? To
You're
start
correct.
to put your heart and soul into something and be that entrepreneur spirit and come in and own a piece of the puzzle. Figuratively speaking, until you could actually put real equity into the partnership and stuff. So awesome stuff. So, I guess from a logistics standpoint, right? You come into the organization. Did you take over an initial part of it? Were you an ops person? Were you more of a marketing and business development? What area did you concentrate on to initially bring your value in?
Well, we start out usually as consultants. So I came in as a consultant and a peer group facilitator. So that's a really great foundation in our business to really get to know all of our customers. So we have 11 peer groups that we facilitate that meet twice a year. So that's 22 in-person meetings, and they get to pick where we meet. So it's all over the country, sometimes in Canada as well. And so that's a really wonderful place to really get to know people, to start building relationships. By facilitating the peer groups, you start to know, what are their challenges in the business? What are they really, really good at? What are they struggling with? Where do they need help? And then those conversations kind of branch into the consulting part of our business. And that's where we can kind of dig into whether it's business planning, compensation planning, is it strategic planning, for the long term? And then looking at, do they need help with developing their people? So that's where we, really focus on our education programs. We were very excited to launch a sales leadership program last year that really stemmed out of, we used to do it in person. It was kind of a 3-day in-person engagement. And once we had all had to deal with COVID, that kind of slowed down the in-person engagements for a while. So we thought to ourselves, well, what a great opportunity to take this program that we used to deliver in person and develop a blended learning program. So now we have this wonderful program. It is both online, it's a cohort, we have in-person kind of office hours, we have in-person teaching, but then they also have their own people that are their, we call it accountability partners. And so they're paired up with another person that kind of keep them accountable throughout the program. And it's been great. We've had really great feedback from it. And we'll probably take our other educational programs, and we're in the middle of developing those for blended learning as well.
Oh, that's interesting. The Go4CEO channel, you hear these things, right? Peer groups and webinars and events that you go to in person. These are the types of opportunities where you mesh, mindsets and strategy, and as a leader in the organization, you bring them closer, right? You bring your clients closer to you and have those real relationships flourish and go through the process of evolving and thinking and challenging different questions. So I love that stuff. It's really interesting to see. So as you came in and started kind of challenging and putting yourself out there and going a little bit different than your own business, right, in the commercial furniture space, what were some challenges that you faced, now kind of teaching the colleague that was maybe a competitor before, but now in a peer group and you're the leader of that peer group?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. Well, first of all, I've always been one of these kind of nosy neighbors. So even when I was in the market and I had competitors, I was really interested in kind of what made them tick. Yes, from a competitive standpoint, but I was really just more curious, like, hey, what makes them different than us, and what makes their main manufacturer? How do they go to market differently? I was just really curious about the cultures and their business strategy. And so once I came over to this side of the business, we're kind of Switzerland. And so we get to hear from all of those people, and I get to learn, and it's so exciting every day because I'm like, oh, that's what really makes them different, because they are all so very unique. Each one of them has their own message, they have their own personality. And so that was very, very exciting for me. And the biggest challenge for me was I was probably not confident in my financial acumen. So I really had to dig in and learn that, because one of the biggest things that we do is financial benchmarking for all of our dealer peers. And so, and then we offer a review with them every year. Once they've submitted that survey, we offer them a review of that survey. Well, I felt uncomfortable when I first got here about being able, what do I have to add to that? Because I knew enough to keep my business going, but I didn't quite know how to dive into a P&L and really make significant changes to change the course of my business, right? It was more on gut than anything. So I really had to dig in and learn that. And I've been surprised to find that I love that part of our business and really digging into the data and really what makes a business operationally successful.
They say the devil's in the details, right?
Absolutely.
As my other hat, non-YouTuber hat, as a commercial banker, I really love that part, right? You can take an entrepreneur, a CEO, founder, and their passion was churros, or it was, this or machinery and all that stuff. And yeah, it is something that you have to kind of get into, right? You surround yourself with the right people, but you took ownership, right? You took that entrepreneur spirit to take ownership of that part. Even though you had your own business, it wasn't necessarily a huge competency or strength, but you
Right.
dove into it. So, what were some of the things that you learned from that then helped you coach the peer group from that perspective?
Well, I really learned that there are some key metrics that we look at that really, if you dial those metrics in, you can really make true changes to the operational performance of your business. So, we look at things, in the commercial furniture business, you have the sales process like a lot of companies do. You have that upfront sales process, but then you get into the design and deliverables. So you're delivering visuals and pricing and specifications. And then you have the back end of the project, which is you have to deliver all of that, right? We're delivering to big commercial buildings and thousands of people there, the desk and chairs and conference rooms that they all sit in. So it's a very complex business. And it was really helpful to take a look at, wow, if I make a change here, that affects my entire business, the success of my entire business. So getting to know where we can suggest where they make changes to and really dial in on those areas is rewarding for us, and it gives them kind of the tools that they need to then take the next step to start making those changes within their business.
No, hey, the ecosystem of supply chain, and you forget, just because you sold something, you have to deliver it, and you have to
Yes,
do it in the right manner, at the
right,
right pace, right?
right.
Coordinate calendars, all that good stuff.
Yeah,
It could
it's
be
crazy.
a logistical nightmare at times, right? So neat.
Absolutely.
Well, we talked about at the beginning of the podcast the six strategies, right? So I'd love to start diving into that part. It seems like it's a very unique competency that you guys have, and you've built out a super incredible model to really help these businesses. What are two or three of those initial ones that you would like to talk about?
So one of them is that we look for is installed margin. So installed margin for us is really kind of the whole process that it takes to deliver that desk, right? So you're looking at not only the cost of goods, so the cost that you paid for that desk, but you're also looking at the warehouse delivering install services that went into delivering that desk. You're also taking a look at what's the design and project management services that went in to delivering that desk. So that is one piece of data that we always look at. And we always say for dealerships, for commercial furniture dealerships, your business is kind of run on your installed margin. So when we go from there, we go into the next one is like core expense, So if you have a great installed margin, you're rocking it on that, but then your core expense is too high, then that starts to eat away at your profit, right? And then when we look at core expense, the next one we look at is sales expense. So a lot of times we'll find some areas in sales expense and so what is sales expense? For us, it is not just the seller, your compensation for what you're paying your sellers, but it's also the sales support, it's design, and it's project management. That for us in our business is all under sales expense. What is it taking for you to close that business? So those are kind of the main ones that we look at. And of course, operating profit, that's the bottom line, right? You're looking
Mhm.
at the bottom line. But those other four that I gave you, those are the things that kind of lead to that bottom line. So you've got to have those all in check for you to have a really great profit margin. This particular industry is a very, very lean profit margin industry. Some people look at us and like, why in the world would you go into this industry? This industry has an average of a 2.5 operating profit. That is crazy, right? And so when you look ahead, you're like, okay, well, how do we, in our best in class folks, for kind of our top quartile, they're more at like 6 or 7. So if you're a 2.5 person, you're like, hey, how do I get to that 6 or 7? Because that is a huge multiplier in your bottom line, right? So those are the things that we look at and kind of the things that we hone in on when we're looking at data.
Well, you made me think of, obviously the last 6 months, manufacturing and abroad and this thing called tariffs.
Tariffs.
How have you guys approached, obviously being a top level consultant in that industry and helping these peer groups adjust and maybe just be strategic about the way that they're going to look at the next 6 to 18 months? I know some good news came out yesterday with Europe and all that stuff, but what are some thoughts on that?
Well, so I think it has changed. And we had this conversation yesterday on a call. And when the tariff first came out, so around kind of, that April timeframe, April, first part of May timeframe, it was really chaotic because, first of all, we have manufacturers as customers. So the manufacturers really got hit hard, right? Because, if you think of a height adjustable desk that we all use nowadays, that laminate might be made here in the US. The base may have been made somewhere else, right? And then they ship in the base and then they assemble the complete version of that height adjustable table. So there's going to be tariffs on part of that height adjustable table, but yet not a tariff on the laminate that you got here. So it became, and just multiply that out to a much more complex products, right? So it became very kind of convoluted for especially the manufacturers and what they were having to deal with, like what has a tariff, what's the a percentage, and then, you had a tariff, but then you didn't have a tariff, and then they had a tariff, it kept kind of going back and forth. So it really caused some chaos and confusion in our industry, as well as I'm sure all the other industries. But it seemed as if once the dealers, so we had several calls with our distribution teams, and they kind of embraced it and said, listen, it is what it is. There is nothing that we personally can do to change whether there are tariffs or there's no tariffs. Now, what we can do is how do we communicate this to our customers? The good thing about what was happening with the tariffs is that it was all over the news, right? So there was no way a customer could say, well, yes, I've heard about these tariffs, but I'm sure that that's not affecting your pricing. It absolutely was affecting everybody's pricing, no matter what industry that you were in. And so it was a bit easier to have the conversations and to start putting some of those tariff fees, unfortunately, on quotes. So once they kind of figured out their messaging, figured out, hey, how do we simplify this for the customer? It became kind of, look, this is something that we have to deal with. It's not going away. We have to address this. And as the months have gone on, from the dealer standpoint, we have heard less and less noise about the tariffs. So it seems like, I mean, they haven't gone away. It's still an issue for us, but it seems like they've kind of gotten their arms around it to at least be able to deal with it with their customers. Because a lot of things were going out and had already been quoted, but by the time it was going to be delivered, there was going to be a tariff on it. So it was painful for people.
Yeah, yeah, I guess the way I equate it to the story is change in general, right? Human beings tend to have a struggle with change, and when it comes abruptly that way, it's certainly impactful. I always want to be sensitive. My commercial banking hat on my
Yes.
day to day. is sensitive to that. But I always try to bring a calmness to it, right? Like, okay, hey, let's take a
Exactly.
deep breath. It sounds like you guys did the same thing. You researched some things, and I actually found out this similar things. I didn't realize that each piece within something assembled could come from China or Switzerland or wherever,
Absolutely.
and then different places. And then how do you, it becomes a lot
How
of
in the world do you
mechanisms.
price that?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So, I personally had a client with Italian machinery that came in and like meat slicing and all that stuff, and it was really interesting to hear their approach to it, right? And yes, a lot of times that it's a pass through, right? And but you're adjusting, and I think the biggest theme there at Go4CEO community is change. It's inevitable. It's expected. Don't not embrace it, embrace it, bring it in, and work with people like Shelley and her firm to have great peer groups, great consultants around you, right? Have other eyes and ears around you. So, I love the sixth bullet. I had to use my glasses there, but revenue per salesperson. I was
Yeah.
really interested in that because I've been in sales all my life and owned a business and been in sales as an entrepreneur and entrepreneur. I think it's a very interesting topic. Could you go a little bit deeper into how you guys think about that and what's the framework behind it?
Sure. It's actually one of my favorite data points. And when I owned my dealership, when I was a partner in my dealership, I used this as well. So it's pretty easy. In our industry, what we find is it's about $1 million per person for not just sales, but per person. So if you have a $30 million company, it kind of equates to you should have about 30 people. So it's real easy. It's a super easy number to remember. It's just how it lands is around that $1 million mark. So that's kind of the high level number that you look at. Easily to divide. If you've got a $50 million company and you've got 120 people, you're number one, probably not very profitable. You have people who probably have much more capacity in them than what is being shown in your revenue.
Mm,
And so there's a lot of work to be done there. The same goes if you have a $50 million company and you only have 25 people, think how stressed your people probably are in producing $50 million in that 20 for with only 25 people. Now, this is just our industry. So we found that to be just a really good number. So then when you break it down further, you can break it down by, okay, let's break it down to our sales team. What's our sales team producing? And in our industry, it's around $4.5 million per person. So if you've got people, or if you're coming in at 2.5 million, what we would tell you is, hey, what's going on there? Because you're about half the price, or you're half the volume of the top quartile or even the average other people. So what's going on? And it could be that you have new sellers, you have new people, you've had a lot of turnover. So maybe you need training. Maybe you have sellers who maybe don't have the skill sets to be really great producing sellers. Maybe they're going after the wrong projects, right? So maybe they're hunting projects that really aren't in your wheelhouse. And so you're working on a lot of things, but it's not booking, right? It's not showing up in the revenue. So though that's why we look at that. And we do it the same for designers, project managers, and sales support as well. So we kind of do it for all the people in the company because there's always a story that's behind that. It doesn't mean that people are lazy. It could mean many, many other things. So you just have to dig deeper when you see that it's off.
I love that strategy. To think about that each person owns a portion of that gross top line, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've always thought that in a dynamic way where if you're in sales and you have admin behind you and there's a support team, everybody should pull their weight to be able to have a value dollar, compensation towards what they make and what they bring into the company, right? As an entrepreneur, you got to think about those things because ultimately, I'll give a personal example. I just made a change of banking institutions, and yes, I negotiated a higher jump and all that stuff. But I always think to myself, okay, well, I want to be about a 10 times multiple of that, right? If the organization feels, and I negotiated something at X, I want to be able to bring in 10 times that. So I'm just a 10% piece of that puzzle, right? So
Right.
it's interesting. And different industries are different ways. Like you said, the margins are super tight. I can
Yeah.
think of
Yeah.
some people in your industry that I know personally, and I get those types of
Yeah.
feedbacks, right? Hey, our margins are super tight, and we can't move this or that, or we can only pay up to that, or what have you. But I love the way you described it on putting a monetary value so that there is that expectation, and everybody can feel like they're
They're
putting a
contributing.
contribution.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing is that when you can spread that out throughout your entire company, then people start to realize that, oh, what I do matters, and I
yeah,
am actually contributing to the growth of this company. So it gives them ownership and accountability that they don't really have if they don't understand, right?
yeah. Well, look, you just said a interesting word, right? Ownership and accountability. So, shameless plug, chapter 3 of the 4A formula,
Yeah.
accountability, right? There's nothing like looking in the mirror and taking accountability. There's a better author than me at the moment named Jocko Willink, a former Navy SEAL, that talks about extreme ownership, right?
Mhm.
His book was super detailed on accountability. And in my book, accountability talks about just the main fact that you could look in the mirror. So I love, Shelley, that you took ownership from the beginning, having been an entrepreneur yourself, joining a group where you were kind of more of a contributor, but you had that entrepreneur mindset. So, tell
Absolutely.
us a little bit about, I guess, organizationally, very interested on some of the dynamic that's going on now that you said that you're looking into equity. I think the Go4CEO community could, really, cherish this part of the conversation where you were inside the organization, and now over the last few years you've thought about, okay, now I'm going to be an equity partner. What's that dynamic like, up to the amount of information you can share?
Yeah, so no, that's a great question. And because I've been involved in two different type of ownership transitions, what has been really great about this one is number one, I knew coming in that this was kind of the plan, right? As long as I was in for it, then they were going to be in for it as well, right? So, I mean, it kind of took the first year to go, okay, do I want to do this the rest of my life? Do I really want to dig into this business? And clearly, I mean, after 6 months, I was like, yes, I am all in. And so David and I have just worked really closely regarding how do we transfer those shares? How do I buy shares? So we had some really great discussions about that. And so at this point, it's a split, right? He's still majority owner, but I mean, we're almost 50-50. So it's 48-52. So we're there. And then we've got one kind of final step to take in the next year. So I think what's really exciting about that is David was so great to work with and just fair in the way that he presented the ability for me to transition into ownership. And I think that that's the hard thing. When I look at our distribution peer groups, you could look at ESOPs, right? The problem with our industry is some of these distributors are getting so big. When you're over $100 million dealer, it's very difficult to find someone within your organization who could buy into ownership at that amount, right? So you have to be really creative. Is it owner finance? Is it sweat equity? Or is it reserved compensation? That you bank to buy shares? Is it looking at private equity people coming in or investors? So there's so many different choices for them to have. The same with our business, right? David could have gone a million different ways. There are many companies out there that are very interested in Solomon Coyle, specifically for the 20 years of data that we've collected, all on its own is very, very valuable. And it's hard to kind of replicate that somewhere else. You put the educational programs and the consulting programs on top of that, it makes it very valuable for someone else to take a look at us and go, hey, Solomon Coyle, what are you thinking? So I think that you just really have to look at, are you looking inside your company for people who you can put on the bench to work their way into ownership for your company? And for us, as soon as I became part of an owner, had part ownership in this company, I immediately looked at, hey, who's my bench? Who do I want to fill in and backfill into this company? Who I would completely trust to carry on the legacy of David Solomon and the foundation of what he started. So I think that that's really exciting. And, who knows where it's going to go, but I think it's just different for each owner on how they think of then their own transition. And I've always been a big proponent as soon as or even before you become an owner, you better be thinking about, okay, well, what's your next step? What's your transition plan? And so that's what I always think about. I'm always looking for those people on our bench that can really step up to the plate.
Well, those are key words, Go for CEO community. Who's on your bench and what's your next move? Who can replace you, right? We're all
Absolutely.
replaceable in
We are
general.
all
Uh,
replaceable.
but God forbid something happens health wise, turns in the business, needing to acquire something to boost a certain area of your business operations. It's always good to have bench strength, which I love that you mentioned, and those components of it. So, as you've transitioned now into ownership and looking at it from a different lens, right? You always had that lens inside you before. What are some of the things that you've done right with the people, right? You're teaching your peer groups about sales compensation and strategies behind that, and how you're looking to do that. What are some of the things that you're doing with the people inside Solomon Coyle?
Oh, that's a great question. We really looked at, we lost a key member last year. He retired, which, we were super excited for him, but that kind of left a hole in Solomon Coyle because he had been here for 13 years. So, but what we did is we kind of took that opportunity to look at, okay, who's going to fill the bench? And is there anything that we want to do differently? So we have this opportunity to take a look at maybe our peer groups a little bit differently, or maybe it's looking at our education a little bit differently, or how we communicate with people. And so we started tackling some of those things this year. We've kind of taken our peer groups and kind of flipped it on its head in how we are trying to make our meetings very kind of user specific. When you have 11 peer groups and you have a company of 10, it's a big lift. We always tease that we kind of punch over our weight class with the number of people that we have. So what I really challenged the team with, and they totally rose to the challenge because we have amazing people, they really started taking ownership of the peer group area and really kind of inserting their own ideas. And, I was able to pass the baton to a lot of what I was doing in peer groups to our team members, and they are doing such a great job. And so I think that's my role now is to, hey, I've got to bring other people up alongside me and delegate because I have an issue with delegating. So, I've had to learn to delegate and trust and hand some of those things over so that I can then work on the business and scaling the business and doing different things with the business.
Well, you said a hot button for SMBs, right? Small and medium-sized business owners. One of the hardest things for them is to delegate, and how you go from employee to solopreneur to business owner is a super key. So tell us a little bit. I'll dive a little bit deeper on that specific statement. How did you start to release the chains, right? Because that is a big deal, and that's how you really become a real business, right? Is when you could
Yep.
start to delegate and put some power into the people that are around you that you've decided to bring into the organization. So tell us about that.
Well, so when I came into the organization, there were some key people here already that are amazing and just at the top of their game. And I think if you would talk to any of our peer group members or, customers, they would name each one of those people and they would tell you exactly what they love about each one of them. So I really wanted to, as we started bringing in new people, I wanted to complement those people that were already here and really kind of match their expertise level and their expectation levels of their team members. So that's what I was really looking for. And I felt that we really did that. One of our first hires here when I came on board was Ashley Baker, who is a consultant. And Ashley's been with us for about a year and a half and really kind of took the peer groups bull by the horns and just jumped right in there. She's got this infectious personality that everyone loves. She's super smart. And I just, after that first year of letting her kind of get the training wheels off and going to all these meetings and really seeing her in action, it felt really comfortable to kind of give her a new challenge and say, hey, this is the challenge that I've got for you. Are you up for it? And she really has, stepped up to the plate. She's much more organized in those type of things than I am. So it's even better. I mean, you're not just trying to replace yourself, but you're trying to better the situation as well. So she brings skill sets that, aren't probably some of my strengths. So she did great there. We just brought in another new consultant that has been in our industry for as long as I have. And so she's adding just great depth to our consulting team and really having her on board. When we're planning some of these meetings, we're way ahead of where we would have been, the last season that we did these the logistics and everything. So I think it's just one by one that you just kind of keep adding the team members. And when I look at, John Joseph on our team, who kind of he's the wizard, behind all of our data and analytics. And, he's more of a quiet kind of in the background kind of guy, but I mean, when people talk to them, they really get a sense of, wow, this person really knows what they're doing. And so, to be able to hire people in at a John level that John will love working with, and Sherry, who's kind of just the person who is the heart of all of our peer groups, someone that she'll want to work with. Those are the people that we're really proud of. And we even hired an education expert. So when we did our blended learning, we said, hey, we want to, instead of outsourcing most of this development, let's hire someone in who is an expert at education and delivering education programs. And so that's where we hired Rachel. And she's just been amazing at taking our education programs to a whole nother level.
Go4CEO community, if you just listen to the last 2 minutes there, that was a mini masterclass on describing the talent that you're bringing into your organization and the competencies that you're trying to fill and showcasing it from a leadership perspective. That Shelley just shared the heart and soul of her teammate and where they have adjusted and brought a ton of value, right, to the organization of Solomon Coyle. So super stuff. One of the last things that we talk about is usually marketing is a big deal. I know that in an organization like yours, it's set its reputation for many decades now, right? And you guys are doing some big stuff. But is there anything that you guys are doing a little bit differently in marketing, or are you kind of towing the line of what you've always been able to do? What are some areas that you feel like are innovative? Anything like that?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up. We historically, so we had a marketing director inside Solomon Coyle, and they did an amazing job. They did really grew our company to kind of where it was a couple of years ago and worked hard to get us there. They were experts at campaigns and just did an amazing job. But what we found is as we were trying to scale all these different programs, the education programs and our peer groups, I mean, we have, data and analytics and research that we were trying to do, we realized that there is no way that we could expect one person in a marketing position to have all of these skill sets that we needed. We needed the social media skill sets. We needed the white paper and thought leadership skill sets. We needed the campaign skill sets. And then we just needed the branding and marketing kind of overall skill set. And so we decided to outsource our marketing. And that has been one of the best decisions that we have ever made. We were very lucky that someone came to us as a referral from a mentor of mine from many years ago. And she has worked out, and her company has worked out so well. we would have never been doing podcasts ever. Ever. You know, we talked about it all the time, and our internal person, she absolutely tried to get us there, but it took having kind of a team around our marketing person to allow us the freedom of time to be able to do some of these things. So really that has been a huge impact on our business, on filling our education programs and our classes, and just really getting the word out there about like, who the heck is Solomon Coyle and what do you all do? So one of the best decisions we've ever made,
You
for
know,
sure.
it's interesting, right? As you grow a business, you get to a level where you start to think, oh, well, like everybody knows us, right? We're so established.
Yes,
What else can we actually do, right? And
a
it's
lot.
interesting how many people don't know you,
That's right.
and they're in their own world, right? You got to keep on repeating. It's still interesting. My wife works for an advertising firm, Leo Burnett, and they're pretty popular, but I'm always curious because I'm like, man, those people are still spending millions and billions of dollars, and they're established, like
Right.
Chobani Yogurt, and I won't, McDonald's, all these corporations, and then from a small business owner perspective, you're like, oh, you won't spend 10 grand, 25 grand, right?
Right.
You got to
Right.
keep on doing it. So really,
You
really
have to,
interesting stuff.
and yeah, and she's just become she's really part of our family. She is part of Solomon Coyle. She knows us. She probably can tell the story sometimes better than we can.
Yeah.
She's been amazing. So we're so happy that we made that decision, because she brings, she's not just one person. She brings a whole team of people that have expertise in everything that we were really needing as we scaled our business.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm just guessing here, but is she more of a fractional CMO or?
She is. Yeah,
Okay.
she
All
is.
right.
I mean, we keep her pretty darn busy, but
Yeah.
yes, she's a fractional CMO, and just although I feel like, she's kind of full time, really.
Sure, sure.
I mean, as much
Well,
as much as we have her do, it's full time kind of.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's where, that industry of fractional, right? I know some
Mm.
people don't like saying that specific word, but it's been such an advantage, right, for
Oh my
small
gosh.
and medium-sized business owners
Yeah.
to take the expertise of someone that actually has a small business, right, or medium-sized business that is doing that, and maybe had that C-suite experience and coming down to be able to help, and then they have their own small business, but they can do three, four, five people. I have a resource group that was just on Michelle Griffith, a PhD, and she shared how that dynamic in HR has really developed over the last few years. And I think people that have the expertise but maybe don't want to play in the corporate game anymore can be their own business, right, and go entrepreneurial and still give a ton of value because of where they came from and what they know already.
I completely agree. And it really does provide smaller businesses like us the resources to grow our business and be able to afford to grow our business. And like you said, really get valuable resource from what they offer, whether that's marketing or a CEO or a CFO, whatever it is, that those people are out there. I mean, I'm so thankful for those people because and they really do just become part of your team. And, we could not do that if we had to hire every single one of those people.
Get expensive, so.
It would get very
Yeah.
expensive. Yes.
Well, awesome, Shelley. Well, we like to end our interviews with CEO. So it's client experience for C. E is for engagement. And, you talked a little bit about that. And O for operational excellence. That's the system, the nuances that you're using in the back office and, expediting and systematizing things. So why don't we start with client experience at Solomon Coyle? What is the value proposition, the differentiator, the 60-second elevator pitch of why people should be using Solomon Coyle in your industry?
Well, first of all, it starts with our data and analytics. We are really the only ones in our industry who have the data that can support any type of operational strategy that you might be looking at within our business. And we'd love to expand that to other industries as well. We think that we have honed in on a really great way to talk about finances, to talk about operations, to talk about compensation. Those are two areas where we really excel in. So that I think that that sets us apart. But then we're in the trenches with our folks because of the peer groups. So we're hearing exactly where their pain is. And I think when you match the data with kind of the pain points or the struggles, it marries up really nice within our industry.
Awesome, awesome stuff. So, they say engagement is about putting the effort in, right? Building relationship, understanding. David Solomon took you under his wing and, plucked you out of doing your own thing to come into an organization. And obviously that's been fruitful for you. What are some of the things that you do either with your peers, with your clients, with your vendors that are engaging things, from events to maybe social hours? What are some of the things that you do?
Well, so if you looked at my calendar, everyone gets really, really scared when they look at my calendar because we're literally on calls because we're all remote. So all of Solomon Coyle is distributed workforce. So
Oh,
we're
wow.
not in the same city, we're all in different cities. So we spend a lot of time on virtual calls. But if you look at my calendar, I am on a call every single half hour with either my internal team or a customer. Or it might be even a sponsor or a vendor partner that likes to sponsor our peer groups. So I am always on the call, talking with people, learning more about them, maybe helping them through an education program that they were struggling with or a question that they have about their business. I would say that our entire team is um, highly engaged with our customers and each other as well.
Mhm.
So I think that that is so important. It's one of the things that I think that we excel at. We do really, really well.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, the remote status over the last decade or so, and especially through the pandemic and changing 5 years ago, gave that kind of like nitrous glycerin right side of things where it's exploded into that dynamic, but not easy to sometimes maintain or
Right,
have KPIs and checks and balances, right?
right.
But with a good team, it could be so powerful and give freedom to people to be effective when they need to be, right, at certain times, and not necessarily be a 9 to 5 only mentality. So,
I
um,
completely agree. I love in office. Believe me, I miss like if I could have my whole team around me, that would be amazing. But we do silly things like I'll turn on a Teams call and we'll talk for 5 minutes, but then we'll still stay on the team call and we'll just keep working on our own. And if it's almost like we're in the same office and we look up and I'm like, hey, I have a question for you. Can you answer that? And then we'll go back down to working. So we're weird like that. But
oh, that's awesome.
we're trying to like duplicate that in-office experience as much as we can.
Yeah, yeah, and then everybody's growing in a different way right now. They're adapting. It's been 5 years of an ultra push to it, but then also kind of the pendulum swing has come back to, hey, come back to the office a little bit. So it's interesting what'll happen over the next decade or so, and with AI and everything else, right? So,
Great.
um,
Yeah.
the last thing is operational excellence. We didn't touch yet, but we'd love to hear from you because we always kind of see what are the systems, the tools, right? Are there certain softwares that you guys use that have really maximized the way you do business? I just mentioned AI affecting you in any
Oh,
way, or are you guys bringing some value that way? What are some things that you're doing in operational excellence?
yeah, great question. So we offer a ton of tools for our customers, but we also use those tools on ourselves too, right? So we look at compensation. Our compensation survey is a tool. Our financial benchmarking survey is a tool. Our budget, we have a budget, an annual budgeting tool that is really helpful. We have a cost per hour per employee tool. So we have all these things that are ways of making their lives better. But I will say AI is in every single conversation that we have. And I believe if we do not have an AI strategy, then you are going to be missing the boat. And it is about elevating the work that you're doing. It's not necessarily about taking away jobs, but it is allowing, especially now, some of those things, those mundane things that people are, I mean, I think of like half of my day, what I do. My God, if someone could just automate that for me, that would be amazing. So, I mean, I just think to have an open mind about AI and really just kind of dive in because it's here. And some of the things that we have seen that it can do, especially in our industry, are mind blowing. So I really encourage everyone to just use that to your business advantage.
I love it. Well, there was a boom. I remember in the early 2010s, virtual assistant is something I kept on hearing,
Yeah.
and oh no, I
The,
need a
the
virtual
4 hour
assistant.
work week. That's
Yeah,
why
yeah, well, yeah,
that.
exactly. So, it's evolved, right? And hopefully we still can help those virtual assistants keep their jobs or maybe enhance the way that they're doing.
Yes,
Obviously, there's a human element to everything we're talking about here, but
absolutely.
certainly effectiveness and speed and giving it the right vision of what you're trying to say, and then allowing it to work for you, going from virtual assistant to AI agent in a way, right?
Right,
So
right,
it's
right.
an interesting dynamic.
There's
So
a happy medium, right?
definitely, definitely. Well, Shelley, thanks so much for being on the Go for CEO channel. Can you
You're
share,
welcome.
the best ways to get a hold of you? LinkedIn, website. What are some other ways that people get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn and just look up Shelley Rosetta. I'm right there. And then you can always email me at srosetta@solomoncoyle.com.
I love it. I love it. Well, Go for CEO community. I don't say it enough because probably, I always want to showcase the people that are on, but hit the subscribe button, hit the like channel, when this episode is out, share it with people in the community. This will be on LinkedIn, on X, on YouTube Shorts, on Apple, on Spotify, on all the streaming networks, and certainly want to bring a lot of value that Shelley shared today and Solomon Coyle and what they're doing to enhance the small and medium-sized businesses, and obviously the corporate and commercial furniture business. Super exciting to hear everything about that.
Thanks so much, John.
Awesome, awesome. Let's see.